Until my last breath, an emotional love story of loyalty, sacrifice, and eternal love. Chapter 1. The First Meeting. Rain was falling softly over the city of Riverdale. The streets glowed under yellow streetlights while people hurried home carrying umbrellas. Cars moved slowly through the wet roads, and the cold wind carried the smell of rain across the city. Inside a small bookstore near the corner of Maple Street, a girl stood quietly arranging books on a shelf. Her name was Emily Carter. Emily was 23 years old. She had gentle brown eyes, long black hair, and a soft smile that could calm even the most broken heart. She lived a simple life with her sick mother in a tiny apartment. Every morning, she worked at the bookstore. Every evening, she returned home to take care of her mother. Life had never been easy for Emily. Her father had died when she was only 12. Since then, she carried the responsibilities of the family on her shoulders. But despite all her struggles, she never lost her kindness. That rainy evening, the bell above the bookstore door rang softly. A young man entered. He looked tired. His clothes were wet from the rain. Drops of water slid from his dark hair onto the floor. Emily looked up. For a brief second, their eyes met. And something changed. The young man walked toward the counter. "Do you have any books about architecture?" he asked politely. Emily smiled. "Second shelf on the left." "Thank you." His name was Daniel Brooks. Daniel was 25 years old. He was an architecture student who dreamed of building beautiful homes one day. Unlike Emily, Daniel came from a wealthy family. His father owned a large construction company. But despite the money, Daniel hated the coldness inside his home. His father cared more about business than family. His mother had passed away years ago. And since then, Daniel felt emotionally alone. That evening, he stayed in the bookstore longer than necessary. Sometimes he looked at books. Sometimes he secretly looked at Emily. The rain outside became heavier. Finally Emily said softly, "Looks like the rain won't stop anytime soon." Daniel smiled. "Seems like it." There was an awkward silence. Then Emily walked toward the small coffee machine near the corner. "Would you like some coffee?" Daniel nodded. "Only if you join me." Emily laughed softly. That was the first time Daniel heard her laugh. And he never forgot the sound. They sat near the bookstore window drinking coffee while rain touched the glass. They talked for hours. About dreams. About fears. About life. For the first time in years, both of them felt understood. When the rain finally stopped, Daniel stood near the door. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said. Emily smiled. "I'll be here." And from that day, everything changed. Chapter 2. Love begins. Days slowly turned into weeks. And Daniel kept returning to the bookstore. Sometimes he bought books. Sometimes he didn't. But Emily knew the truth. He came to see her. One evening, Daniel brought her favorite chocolate after noticing her secretly staring at it days earlier. Emily looked surprised. "You remembered?" Daniel smiled. "I remember everything about you." Her cheeks turned red. Slowly, their friendship became love. Daniel started helping Emily after work. Sometimes they walked through the city together. Sometimes they sat near the river watching lights reflect on the water. And sometimes, they simply sat in silence. Because true love does not always need words. One winter evening, snow covered the streets. Emily and Daniel stood under glowing streetlights beside the frozen river. Daniel looked nervous. "What happened?" Emily asked. Daniel slowly held her hand. "Emily, yes, I think I fell in love with you the first day I saw you." Emily's heart beat faster. The cold wind moved her hair gently. Daniel continued. "You changed my life." He looked into her eyes. "And I don't want a future without you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever loved her this deeply. No one had ever looked at her like she was the most precious person in the world. "I love you too," she whispered. Daniel smiled. And under the falling snow, he kissed her forehead softly. Sad and beautiful violin music seemed to play in the background of that moment. The city disappeared. Only their hearts remained. Chapter 3. The Broken Home. Not everyone was happy about their relationship. Especially Daniel's father. Mr. Brooks was a strict and arrogant businessman. When he discovered that Daniel loved a poor bookstore girl, he became furious. "She is not suitable for our family," he said coldly. Daniel stood silently inside the large dining room. "I love her." "Love?" His father laughed bitterly. "Love does not build empires." Daniel clenched his fists. "She makes me happy." Mr. Brooks slammed his hand on the table. "You will end this relationship immediately." "No." The room fell silent. His father stared at him in disbelief. "No. For the first time in my life, Daniel said emotionally, I found someone who truly cares about me. His father's face hardened. If you continue seeing that girl. He paused. Then you are no longer my son. Daniel felt pain crush his chest. But he made his choice. I choose Emily. That night, Daniel left his father's mansion. He walked through the cold streets carrying only a small bag. When Emily opened the apartment door and saw him standing there in the rain, she immediately understood. Without saying a word, she hugged him tightly. Daniel broke down crying in her arms. Emily gently held his face. You are not alone anymore. And for the first time in years, Daniel truly believed it. Chapter 4 Hard Times. Life became difficult. Daniel started working small jobs to survive. He delivered food. He worked at construction sites. Sometimes he worked all night. Emily continued working at the bookstore while taking care of her sick mother. Money became a constant problem. Some nights they only had enough food for one person. Emily secretly pretended she wasn't hungry so Daniel could eat. Daniel noticed. One night he placed half his sandwich in front of her. You need this more. Emily smiled sadly. So do you. Despite everything, they stayed together. Their tiny apartment was poor. The roof leaked during rain. The heater barely worked, but love filled every corner. One evening, while Emily slept beside her sick mother, Daniel quietly watched her. Her face looked tired. Dark circles had appeared under her eyes. Yet she still smiled every day. Daniel whispered softly, you deserve a better life. Emily opened her eyes. I already have one. Daniel looked confused. She touched his hand. You. Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He kissed her hand gently. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window while emotional piano music echoed through the silence. Chapter 5 The Illness. Months passed. Then tragedy struck. Emily's mother became critically ill. The doctors said she needed expensive treatment immediately. Daniel worked harder than ever. He barely slept. He sold his watch. He sold his laptop. He even borrowed money. But it still wasn't enough. One night, Emily sat alone in the hospital hallway crying silently. Daniel found her there. He sat beside her. I'm sorry, he whispered. Emily shook her head. You already do too much. Daniel held her tightly. We'll save her. But deep inside, both of them feared the truth. A week later, Emily's mother passed away. Emily completely shattered. At the funeral, rain poured heavily from the sky. Emily stood silently dressed in black. Daniel held an umbrella above her. But nothing could protect her heart. After everyone left, Emily broke down crying beside the grave. She was all I had, she cried. Daniel hugged her tightly. No, he whispered with tears in his own eyes. You still have me. Emily cried against his chest for hours. And from that day, Daniel became her entire world. Chapter 6 The Proposal. 1 year later, Daniel finally found stable work at a small architecture company. Slowly, life improved. Not perfectly, but enough. One evening, Daniel took Emily to the rooftop of an unfinished building overlooking the city. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Soft music played from Daniel's phone. Emily smiled. What is all this? Daniel looked nervous. Then he knelt down. Emily covered her mouth in shock. Daniel pulled out a small ring. It's not expensive, he said softly. But every part of my heart belongs to you. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks. Emily Carter. He smiled emotionally. Will you marry me? Emily cried happily. Yes. Daniel placed the ring on her finger. Then he hugged her tightly while the city lights sparkled behind them. For a moment, life felt perfect, but fate was silently preparing something terrible. Chapter 7 The Enemy. Daniel's father had many business rivals. One of them was a dangerous man named Victor Kane. Victor hated the Brooks family. Years ago, Daniel's father had destroyed Victor's business empire. Since then, Victor waited for revenge. When Victor learned that Daniel had separated from his father and was emotionally vulnerable, he saw an opportunity. One night, Daniel received threatening messages. At first he ignored them. But then strange cars started following him. Emily noticed his fear. What's happening? She asked. Daniel forced a smile. Nothing. But Emily knew he was lying. Days later, Daniel was attacked outside work by unknown men. He returned home injured. Emily panicked. Oh my God. She cleaned his wounds while crying. Who did this? Daniel looked away. It's complicated. Emily grabbed his hand. Please don't hide things from me. Daniel finally told her everything about Victor. Emily became terrified. We should go to the police. They can't protect us. That night, neither of them slept. Fear entered their lives, and slowly, it began destroying their peace. Chapter 8 Running Away. One evening, Daniel received a final warning. Leave the city, the message read. Or die. Daniel knew Victor was serious. So he made a painful decision. We're leaving tonight, he told Emily. Emily nodded immediately. As long as we're together. They packed quickly. Just before midnight, they left the apartment. Rain poured from the dark sky. The streets were nearly empty. Daniel drove nervously while Emily looked behind constantly. Then suddenly, bright headlights appeared. Several black cars followed them. Emily gasped. Daniel. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They found us. The chase began. Cars raced through wet streets. Tires screamed. Dangerous men chased them through the city. Emily cried, "Please drive faster." Daniel tried desperately, but one car slammed into them from behind. Crash. Their car spun violently. Daniel hit his head against the window. Blood ran down his face. The car stopped near an abandoned bridge. The black vehicle surrounded them. Armed men stepped out. Victor Kane slowly emerged from one of the cars. He smiled, coldly. Finally, Daniel protected Emily behind him. Victor laughed. "You should have stayed away from your father's business. This is between you and me," Daniel said angrily. "Then why not let the girl go?" Victor mocked. Emily held Daniel's hand tightly. "I'm not leaving you." Victor signaled his men. They pointed guns. Rain poured harder. Thunder exploded across the sky. Everything felt like a nightmare. Chapter 9: The Sacrifice. Victor aimed his gun directly at Daniel. Goodbye. Time slowed. Emily looked at Daniel, the man she loved, the man who stayed beside her through pain, poverty, loss, and darkness. Memories flashed through her mind. The bookstore, the snow, the proposal, his smile, his love, and in that single moment, Emily made her choice. Victor pulled the trigger. Bang! Daniel's eyes widened. Emily suddenly stepped in front of him. The bullet struck her chest. Silence. Daniel froze. Emily collapsed into his arms. No. Rain mixed with blood. Daniel screamed. Emily. Victor's men became shocked. Even Victor stepped back silently. Emily's body trembled. Daniel held her desperately. No, 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 please. Tears streamed down his face. Emily touched his cheek weakly. Are you okay? She whispered. Daniel cried uncontrollably. You idiot, he sobbed. Why would you do that? Emily smiled painfully. Because. She struggled to breathe. I couldn't lose you. Daniel shook his head desperately. We'll get help. But Emily already knew. Her white shirt slowly turned red. The rain kept falling. Sad emotional piano music seemed to echo through the darkness. Emily looked into Daniel's eyes one last time. Promise me, Daniel cried. Anything. Live. Daniel broke down. Emily smiled weakly. I love you. Then slowly, her hand slipped from his face. Her eyes closed, and the love of Daniel's life died in his arms. The world became silent. Daniel screamed in pain beneath the storm. Victor looked disturbed. For the first time in years. He felt guilt. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Victor and his men escaped quickly. But Daniel never noticed. He remained there holding Emily's lifeless body while crying endlessly. And under the rain, a love story ended. Chapter 10: After her death. The funeral was held 3 days later. The sky remained gray. Daniel stood beside Emily's grave wearing black clothes. His eyes were empty. His soul felt broken. People whispered softly around him. But he heard nothing. All he saw was Emily, her smile, her laugh, her voice. After the funeral, everyone left. But Daniel stayed. For hours, he sat beside her grave silently. Finally he whispered, "You promised we'd grow old together." Tears rolled down his face. "I was supposed to protect you." The cold wind moved through the cemetery. Daniel placed the engagement ring on top of her grave. Then he cried harder than ever before. Days became weeks. Daniel stopped caring about life. He barely ate. He barely slept. Every corner of the apartment reminded him of Emily. Her sweater, her books, her perfume. Sometimes he imagined hearing her voice. Sometimes he woke up believing she was still beside him. But reality always returned. And reality was cruel. One night, Daniel sat alone looking at old photos. A video suddenly played on his phone. It was Emily. She was laughing. "If you're watching this," she said jokingly, "then you're probably being dramatic again." Daniel smiled through tears. Emily continued, "I just want you to know something." Her expression softened. "You gave me the happiest days of my life." Daniel began crying again. "And if anything ever happens to me," she whispered, "I want you to keep living." Daniel covered his face. Emily smiled. "Because loving you is worth everything." The video ended. Daniel sat silently in darkness. Then slowly, for the first time since her death, he stood up. Chapter 11: Justice. Emily's sacrifice changed Daniel forever. Instead of drowning in grief forever, he decided to honor her memory. He gathered evidence against Victor Kane. Months later, with help from the police, Victor and his criminal network were finally arrested. During the trial, Daniel stood in court holding Emily's necklace. Victor looked older, broken, defeated. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. But victory brought Daniel no happiness. Nothing could bring Emily back. Still, he felt peace knowing justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded him. "Do you have anything to say?" Daniel looked at the sky. Then quietly answered, "The bravest person I ever knew gave her life to save mine." He paused. "I only hope I become someone worthy of that sacrifice." Chapter 12 Until My Last Breath. 5 years later, Daniel became a successful architect. But unlike his father, he used his success to help others. He built free shelters, schools, hospitals, and one day, he opened a small library beside Maple Street. The same place where he first met Emily. Above the entrance was a sign, "Emily Carter Foundation." Inside the library stood a large photo of Emily smiling. Fresh flowers always rested beneath it. Children loved the library. Poor students came there every day. Daniel personally helped many of them. One evening, rain fell softly outside. Daniel stood near the window holding Emily's old scarf. Sad piano music played quietly in the background. He smiled gently. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "You saved me." He looked toward her photograph. "And I'll love you until my last breath." Outside, the rain continued falling across the glowing city. But somewhere inside Daniel's broken heart, Emily still lived, not as a memory, but as the love that shaped his entire soul forever. The end.